We are close to around 30 episodes now in the Goodfirms Leaders Roundtable podcast, and with 21 episodes in the first season itself. So, as I prepare for this podcast, I can't help but think that no matter how much we talk about different technologies, there is something always out there that is continuously evolving in this sector, in the information technology sector. So there is no end to what we can discuss in this field, right? There's no topic that we can run out of when it comes to this podcast. So take, for example, software testing. So much has changed since the last discussion that we had before. We talked about software testing with a company called QA last September, which is 2022. And now we are back here again talking about software testing. Why? Because it has evolved so much since a year now. So without wasting any time, first I'd like to introduce today's guest speaker, Taras. He is the automation test lead at TestFort, having over 10 plus years of experience in software quality assurance as well as testing automation. So, with many successful projects under his belt, Tara's organizational and management skills ensure an efficient workflow on any project that he is working on. So, Taras, thank you so much for coming onto our podcast. And anything that you like to tell about your company, TestFort, to our audience here?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, as you mentioned, I've been like almost 10 years in the IT field, done a lot of test automation related stuff in different domains and different levels of testing, web UI, mobile API, you name it, I have probably done that. And so I am the head of test automation department at TestFort, and the company that provides the quality assurance services, so test automation as a service, to clients in different domains.
That's great. So we see that you have quite experience in this field, in the testing industry. So since the time you started working in this sector, what are the changes that you have seen in the testing space from time to time? How have testing strategies changed since technology has evolved and have changed so much?
When I began around 10 years ago, so the landscape was very different, right? When we're talking about the web UI testing, and I started working as a web UI as a junior automation engineer, at that time that required to have significant technical skill to build an official test automation framework. So you would need to be good with programming, you would need to know certain tools, certain approaches, certain patterns, and knowing all that, you would be able to build an efficient framework. Over the last 10 years, newer frameworks emerged. And while initially we were somehow tied to this tool called Selenium WebDriver for web UI testing, we used to create the whole frameworks around it, right? But in recent years, new tools emerged like Selenide and Playwright. And these tools, they have addressed many challenges that initially had to be handled manually at the start of the automation industry. So in the past, building a good framework required intense technical skill. And now it's more about picking the right tools, knowing about the right tools, and knowing how to integrate them. About a decade ago, there were a lot of misconceptions related to test management people and the product owners. They perceived automation as some kind of silver bullet to the quality assurance problem. And very often, like you could hear the thought and the proposition that everything should be automated and that you didn't need a skilled test automation engineer to properly do that. Test automation was perceived as some kind of a silver bullet for the quality assurance process, like everything should be automated. Also, other misconceptions were that you didn't need a proper test automation engineer, so anyone with some kind of skill could do this automation. These were the two most common misconceptions about test automation. Nowadays, more companies, product and project managers, they have a better understanding of what test automation is, like what value it brings, and that it's not a must on every project. Also, the understanding is now that to build a proper test automation and a successful test automation, we need a highly skilled specialist for that, right? Not anyone can do that. You need a proper guy that has the proper tech skills, experience, and so on. Also, the perception of the quality process itself changed, right? So now we have things like shift left strategy, where we should start testing as soon as possible. So not in the usual Scrum way of doing things. So lots of things have changed, right? Second most obvious change was in testing strategies. Earlier, the most common type of testing, I would say, was UI testing, web UI testing. Now, we have this thing that's called automation pyramid. So that's an approach that says that you should be having a lot of tests on the lower level of testing, like a lot of unit tests and a moderate number of integration tests and a minimal set of UI and end-to-end tests. So that's the change in strategies too. Nowadays, knowing that automation can bring value, the projects and products, they try to solve a specific issue, not just introduce automation for the sake of introducing.
You've talked about really good points here, and the change in perception part that you just talked about, that there was a misconception about automation, or people believe that automation is not just a tech related project. So I'm so glad that testing is taken more seriously now, regardless of the size of the company. Moving forward, I'd like to know that how automation testing can be integrated into the existing testing strategy, because not everyone is onto the automated part. I believe that some are also manually testing as of now, and both of these things are equally important. So are there any best practices or strategies for gradually introducing automation to an already established manual testing process?
Sure. So having that experience with test automation, I've seen lots of ups and downs of integrating test automation into the project. And basically, every project has its context, right? So there's this contextual approach. The decision to introduce and integrate test automation should be relied on solving a specific issue, right? So if there are no issues on your project, quality issues that can be solved by automation, you don't need it. Also, you cannot introduce this automation at any stage of the project life, because we know the project and the product has its own stages, right? And for example, if we're talking about the early stages for the project, it just doesn't make sense to introduce this automation. If the application is in the early stage of development, there will be frequent changes to functionality or user interface. So it's definitely not the best time to introduce this automation, because basically you would spend a lot of time maintaining and fixing that, right? If you don't have an established manual testing process, right? So if there is no manual testing process in place, or the main activities have not been established, so when there is no formalization, no test cases, right, for automation. If the project is kind of short-lived, or a tiny project, right? If your project is basically this single-page application with one page, maybe it doesn't make sense to invest in test automation. Yeah, so instead of investing and creating some kind of framework, introducing some kind of tool chain, you could basically use existing industry standard tools and build a basic framework really quick and create necessary test scripts and start adding value right away. Also, one other thing is basically you should engage all the stakeholders. If you have all the processes established in place and you have the formalized test cases, you should have an understanding of what current issues with manual testing are and how test automation can specifically solve that. So the most common case for introducing automation is regression, right? If you have a lot of regression testing, if it takes a lot of time, if it's a chore or routine, then it's definitely needs to be automated, right? Because you'll be freeing those manual engineers from doing this repetitive work. And instead, they can do something like exploratory testing and add some more value for the project. If there's a defined set of test cases already, so you can also start the automation with doing some kind of a small suite, right? So right now, with the current state of industry, you have all these great tools. You don't need to build the super framework. You just need to combine those tools. It takes very little time, and you start adding the value right away. There also can be different goals in test automation, right? If you can build your automation framework for different types of users, if your framework is intended to be used by the manual testers, right? So you can choose different approaches. You can use like a keyword-driven approach. You can use the behavior-driven approach. So it really depends.
Okay, so can you specify a bit about, you mentioned about keyword-driven framework, right, for manual testers. So what is that? Can you just brief us about it?
Sure. The idea behind the keyword-driven is basically you're in your code, you're building some kind of keywords. Let's say the keyword called navigate. And so instead of using some kind of the programming language, let's say Java or C# or Python, test engineers they will be using your keywords. So you're kind of building this facade, right, and just simplifying the syntaxes. So that's the approach for keyword driven.
Okay. There are IT companies of every size, and there is not necessary that every company may have an in-house testing team. So if they are looking to, maybe hire someone for testing their product before they can launch it to the market, so definitely they can consider TestFort. So we wanted to know that collaboration between developers, testers, and other stakeholders are very important and a key component of the entire software development life cycle. So how does automation testing affects that? Are there any maybe potential challenges or adjustments required to keep that process smooth or to foster effective collaboration between all of these aspects?
So introducing automation into the project can shake things up in the software development lifecycle, right? Automation has like some benefits. It's not just about scripting tests and watching the tests run, right? You need to involve everyone. So integration is key. Test automation influences the entire project. And it's where it's critical, it's essential that automation is not isolated. So it should be like everyone should be aware of it. The product owners, the stakeholders, the dev team, the manual engineers, everyone should know how to trigger that automation and how to read the results. So for automation to truly succeed, it must like seamlessly blend into the existing process. Automation should be accessible and visible, right? So the results should be accessible. Stakeholders should be able to easily view things like reporting, like all that stuff that comes up as the result of test automation. A requirement is also the integration into the CI/CD pipeline. So the developers, they should be able to validate their work using these automated tests. Otherwise, it won't make sense. So if you're introducing test automation, you should make sure that everyone is aware of that and everyone knows how to use that automation and the value it brings, right? There are also some challenges, right? So if when introducing test automation, if there are some inefficiencies in the existing manual testing process, those will definitely impact automation. If the manual test cases are low quality, basically converting them to test scripts will result in low quality test scripts, right? A common challenge is also, the desire to automate everything to increase test coverage, but it's also very often inefficient, right? Coverage is essential, that's true, but automating every single thing is just not the best approach because you basically overload your suites, your regression suites, your smoke suites. And so it's all about, finding the sweet spot between the efficiency and the value.
Because you have such a vast experience in the testing industry, that's why I think you could highlight the fact that automating every single thing in the process isn't always the best approach. Like, this is something which maybe new people coming into the industry may not be aware of. So this is something definitely to pick up. So moving on with the rise of Agile and DevOps practices, how does this automation testing fit into the CI/CD pipeline, or are there any considerations for incorporating these automated tests into these CI/CD workflows?
Yes, introducing of DevOps changed the game in software development and automation testing, right? Also has some kind of role in this. When we talk about CI/CD pipelines, we want to have the smooth integration of this automation into that. And integrating automated testing into that pipeline, it's not just the best practice, it's kind of, it's imperative. So that should be done, right? You as a developer, you write your code, you push your changes, the app gets built and deployed to a test environment. And immediately after that, the automated regression or smoke test kicks in. So this whole entire sequence of events is automated. And what you get is basically this automated chain of code creation, code deployment, code testing, and this decreases the time to market, right? Because you're able to test the changes very quickly. And if you're dealing with multiple testing environments, which is very often the case in the real project, right? You could also have these cascading pipelines. So you deploy your changes, automate test, like has some kind of result, and if it succeeds, the pipeline can continue. That's like ideally, right? But in the real world, so not every automation setup is perfect right off the box. There are some considerations, right? So let's say triggering a 3-hour regression test for a minor code change, that will definitely won't go well with developers, right? I may repeat myself, but it's really crucial to strike the right balance, right? So the goal is to keep your test automation within your CI/CD framework efficient and meaningful, considering the context and needs of your project.
Absolutely. And the next question is something that many people in the industry will relate to, because we've been hearing the word automated testing for quite a while now. So, of course, there are many benefits of incorporating automation testing, but me, along with our audience, we are curious to know that are there any situations where testing automation can be avoided, or is it like required for every other software project out there? Like, is there any specific criteria or guidelines to follow that help anybody understand when automation testing is required or not?
Yeah, no, it's funny how often I get asked this. Just because we have this shiny new tool or shiny new approach, it doesn't mean that we should use it for everything, right? Despite the buzz around automation testing, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. If we're talking about some tiny project with minimal complexity, so maybe it doesn't make sense to invest in automation. The good old manual regression testing will do the trick for this project, right? Also, there are some aspects of testing that just can't be automated, like usability is an example of that. So I think instead of asking when is automation needed, the better question is when does it make the most sense to do test automation and when will it add the most value. If you're like neck deep in manual regression tests, especially the routine repetitive kind that pop up every release, then automation might be right for you, right? If you're investing a lot of hours every week on routine tasks, automation can also be like a lifesaver, so you can get rid of that. Things like non-functional testing. I'm talking about performance, load, stress. So automation really shines here because we can really scale that, right? You cannot scale manual testing for performance, load, or stress, but with automation you can.
Right. I really like how you said that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, that there are some aspects where automated testing can do good, and where there are some aspects which should be left to manual testing only, right?
Right.
So far, we have talked about how automated testing can be incorporated to the existing manual process and a lot of things related to that. So moving forward, are there any ethical consideration or potential risk associated with automation testing? Like, can it lead to reduction in human involvement and critical thinking, potentially compromising the quality of the software? Because manual testing has been done for years now, and automation testing is something which has come to the market and it's performing well. So what is your take on it?
So every technology comes with potential pitfalls and risks, right? When diving into automation testing, you have to be careful. Without some solid strategy or right tools, you might find yourself in with an automation project that's going nowhere fast. It could easily turn into this massive time sink without adding any real value to your product quality and to your product. And here's where the human touch in manual testing plays an irreplaceable role. So picture this. You've got a poorly made manual test case and you decide to automate it. So what will you get? You basically get a poor automated script, right? If there's a mistake in that test case, the chances are high that the mistake will be carried on to the script. So this is not just about potentially reducing human involvement. It's also about ensuring that whatever you're automating is of top-notch quality to begin with. Because if there's like a mistake in the blueprint, it definitely will reflect in your script.
Perfect. As we know that software testing as an industry is changing a lot. So what are some emerging trends or practices in automation testing, such as machine learning or AI driven testing? How do you envision these technologies shaping the future of software testing?
Yeah, so we have this innovation and they are, sprouting left and right. So, the buzzword now are things like ChatGPT, right? So that already began to shape discussions and future possibilities in the testing domain too. In the context of test automation, AI-driven technologies, particularly in the realm of result analysis, they could be a game changer, right? So imagine using AI not only for the test execution, but also for some result interpretations, some result analysis. So the AI can do that more efficiently than the human, right? And on a bigger scale. The intriguing part here is that we can basically harness, these AI capabilities in creating like basic frameworks. So the prospect of having an AI aid in generating some template codes or boilerplate code, or even helping humans to understand and learn better is really fascinating. But I try to be realistic here. So these technologies, they can certainly augment the testers' capabilities and efficiency, but replacing them entirely, replacing the human testers in the foreseeable future, that seems unlikely to me. Instead, I see that learning how to use these tools, and that will enable the human engineers to excel in their roles and help the industry to enhance and to be more efficient.
I really agree that human testers are an integral part of the testing industry, and automated testing will make them only better. And we came to know recently that TestFort turned 22 quite recently. So first of all, congratulations for that. I think it's a remarkable feat to achieve. So when did you decide to make our company Goodfirms a part of your growth journey, and how has been your experience so far?
Yeah, thanks indeed. So we reached the 22-year mark, and TestFort, it has been a significant milestone for us. Our decision to join forces with our company, with Goodfirms, was driven by our continuous desire to diversify our reach and to collaborate with esteemed platforms in the industry. Goodfirms has provided us with a platform that recognizes our accomplishments through various awards, and that for sure adds to our reputation in the marketplace. As a company, we truly values the potential prospects that such a partnership promises.
Thank you. Thank you so much for showing that trust on Goodfirms. And we'll make sure that not just TestFort completes 22 years in the industry and we keep helping TestFort to grow, but we also wish TestFort much good wishes for the future. So thank you so much, Taras, for sharing your knowledge that you have gathered over the years in software testing and educating me and our audience about how automation testing can be incorporated into the existing testing strategy, challenges, the trends that they can look into it, everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, for giving me this opportunity. It has been a pleasure.
Yes, and you can hear this podcast on Spotify, Google Podcast, and Amazon Music. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.